Well, welcome back, everybody, to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick.
And I'm Corey.
And we're so excited and glad and thankful that you're joining us. We want you to know that we appreciate you joining us on this journey. As we've mentioned over the last couple of weeks and some of these podcasts that are being released with guests over the summer, we have officially hit 100,000 downloads. So
Crazy.
we just want to say thank you so much. What started as just a time to have conversation between the two of us and an outlet for the two of us. And we thought, if we're processing a lot of stuff, maybe others might be processing too, and they'd want to join. And that has happened. And so we just want to say thank you so much. Also, if you haven't done so already, would you please reach out, leave a review? As you hear all the time, we are words of affirmation people, and we just love hearing from you and just the encouragement that this podcast is bringing you. So like, share, subscribe, do all the stuff as we mention all the week or every week. And today we actually have a special guest with us, and I'm just so excited to have Robin with us on this podcast, on this journey. I know Corey has worked closely with Robin, and we're just glad to be able to introduce you to our audience today.
Yeah. So welcome, Dr. Robin Smit, author, teacher,
Corey.
publisher, the founder of TWS, which I think we're going to do a 2-part series here because there's so much information. And since we have you here all the way from California, why not try and get as much information out of you as we can? And so we'll talk about TWS in part 2. You'll have to come back next week to hear it. But welcome to Indiana.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not everybody says that, but we'll
really?
trust you, especially being from
green.
California.
What's the middle of it's the middle of spring, and everything is green. Things are blooming.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes.
So it took you a long time to get here yesterday. I saw that you were leaving at 2 a.m.
2:30 in the morning.
Oh,
I
that's
had to
brutal.
Get up. Yeah.
That's really brutal.
That
And
was
you
really
are
hard.
officially at 43 authors at TWS, but you
am.
yourself,
Shannick is
Shannick, brand new,
43.
depending on when you're watching this, June 25th, if it's before or after, go get his new book.
Yes.
But you have worked with all kinds of people all over the country. But
have.
what I want to spend this episode talking about is your own work, because the first time that I really was introduced to this book, which I'm going to tell you to get, Behold the Lamb by yours truly. This was actually what you did to get your this was your dissertation for your doctorate.
My dissertation, yes.
So I remember in a Zoom call with Dr. Matt Pindell and a whole bunch of other GGS students when you were done, but talking about it before you released it, before you even submitted it.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to, you spoke for 45 minutes, and I was like, this book sounds amazing. And actually, there's one thing that I have stolen from this book and now teach regularly, which we'll get to in just a minute. But why don't you tell us a little bit about this book and some of your other books and why people should get it, and kind of even your own journey of writing.
Okay. Well, I had just finished GGS, and one of the professors, Cecil Cochran, he had been on me to write a book, and I just didn't want to. I didn't know how to write a book, didn't know what the process looked like. And so he asked me to write an article that he could use, and I think he kind of tricked me low key, but I said, okay. And I sat down to write, and he wanted me to write it on whole man redemption because I believe we are fully redeemed. There is no future redemption. We are redeemed body, soul, and spirit. And I sat down to write it, and a week later I had 20,000 words. So I told him, I'm sorry, I can't do the article. I think I have a book.
Yeah.
And I just finished the book in 4 months. I think I finished it. And not every book is like that.
No,
No, they weren't. But I finished that one, and gosh, that was beautiful. I needed to write a second book right away because I had read That's Good Marketing. You don't want just one book. 2 books is great for sales. Yeah, Shannick, you got to write another one real fast. So I published another one within, I think, 5 months. And all I did was take my essays. It's called I Am Awakened, and published my essays, kept them as close to original as possible, just tweaked it to kind of make chapter form. Where my thinking had changed, because we're always growing in grace.
That's right.
I added metanoia moments all throughout the book, and added new ways of thinking that, had gone off on the inside of me. And then I think a year later, I had joined a writing group, and you had to write, I don't know, it started out like 100 words a day, and I was fine. I could do that. And it got up to then 500 words a day, and I was stuck. I could not think of a single thing to write. The pressure of having to write a certain amount was too much. So I pulled out my old healing notes and thought, I could turn those into a chapter, into a book. And I had and when I say notes, I write like 12 pages of notes. I mean, they're ready to go into a chapter. So I turned that into I Am Healed. And then I went to get my doctorate and did my dissertation on Behold the Lamb. Matt Pandle had said, pick a subject that you could never grow bored with, that you could keep preaching, teaching, writing about. And of course, it's a finished work, but I already wrote it as finished. So I thought, well, sin is a finished work. Sinless is our identity. And so I wrote the book on that.
Incredible. So why don't you, what part of it is your most favorite part or difficult part? Dive into it. Why should people go get this book?
Man, the difficult part was working with Matt.
I know, right?
I know.
I have firsthand experience with this, so I get it.
He's amazing, and he absolutely brings out a better book. But man, it was hard. It definitely looked like a crime scene when he finished editing my book.
Oh,
there were red marks all the way through it. But why should you get the book? Because sinless is our identity. It's not just that he freed us from sin where we have power over sin. That's true, but we are completely sinless. We are justified, right? We are as completely sinless as Jesus is. And that's a beautiful thing. And when we realize that, our behavior will line up with that, and we'll walk that way. And we won't struggle with the things we struggled with anymore. I think it's a controversial subject. When I first started telling people I was writing a book on our identity being sinless, people are like, wait, what? What are you talking about? And how are you going to prove that? I don't know. I just went and found a bunch of scripture and I don't know, just I think it turned out great. I'm really proud of that work.
I'm gonna find some quotes in here.
I'm super proud of that work.
Keep going.
Yeah. So hold on just a second.
Okay.
So maybe it wasn't set up quite right because I thought Corey said this might have been your first book or something like that.
Corey just hasn't read my first book.
It is finished.
I haven't read her first book.
I Am Healed. I Am Awakened. So how many books have you written,
I've written
or published?
4.
Okay.
I've written It Is Finished, Awakened, I Am Healed, and then Behold the Lamb.
Okay.
And I'm working on a 5th, but it's been slow going. So that one didn't pour out of me real fast. I haven't had time. But that one's called The Very Good News.
Yeah. So these are things obviously that are just in you of overflow of things that Holy Spirit's been showing you and imparting to you along your journey. So when would you say would be maybe your first encounter, truly with finished work, grace? Has this been something that has been a part of your life, your entire life, or is this in the last 10 years, or what was that journey like?
Well, I didn't grow up in church. I didn't go to church as a kid. My parents didn't go. I started going to church when I was 25 and got saved, right? Are we still using that language? But yeah, I went down and got saved, did the whole prayer. Went to an AG church and then started going to Word of Faith church, which I started getting a hold of the finished work through a Word of Faith church. I know, name it, claim it, all the things you say about Word of Faith, but they really were for the finished work. Of course, I had to appropriate it, make it mine. But, for the most part, I learned a lot about the finished work. But Global Grace gave language to things, and when I came out of Global Grace, I started at 50 and went through Global Grace, and the message of the fact that we were wholly redeemed got so big on the inside, and the fact that our bodies are completely, fully redeemed right now. Not someday when we get to heaven and there's a future resurrection, and all of that. No, right now there was one resurrection and we were in it, right? I mean, that we were included. And so it was a perfect finished work. And now it's just gotten so big, I can't see anything unfinished at all.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a perfect way to describe it because we sit in the same boat of once you see it through this lens, which I was like you, I was very trained in the opposite, being a Liberty grad. I don't even really tell that to people anymore. So it's for me to be so swung on the different side of the pendulum. I'm like, you can't unsee it though.
Yeah.
And why would I want bondage again?
Right.
You know, like that. And so if you're listening to some of the words you said, which I love it. That's why I love this book so much.
Thank you.
Before you send me an email or a question or a rebuttal, I actually won't respond. I will respond to your emails, but I'll say, have you read the book yet? That's going to be my first thing. But you say things like, so I am a very good note taker.
Oh, good.
That's why I can write real fast, kind of what I'm going to talk about.
We are a lot alike.
Oh, yeah. And so I have different color coordinated based on.
Oh, we are a lot alike.
But based on what they, one of my favorite things, I'm gonna just rip off some quotes here.
Okay.
In other words, the last Adam dealt completely and definitively with sin before the first Adam ever introduced it into the world through the fall. That's that thought process, right? Because he's the Lamb of God slain before the foundation of the world. The Hebrew word for wicked in verse 5, which what are we talking about here?
Genesis.
Which verse? Genesis.
Yeah.
Encapsulates a range of dysfunctions, including troubled, afflicted, hurt, ill, and wrong, which I go back into ego work and all that stuff. And it's just so fascinating how much that applies to it. But that is a highlight of the thing that I've stolen, which I love. Who's the Hebrew researcher? Brenner, right? Is that the one the dysfunction?
Yeah.
How in Genesis, the Hebrew word for evil is
dysfunctional.
Better described as dysfunction, which I use that language a lot now because it's so much easier, especially in the counseling world, to help people understand it's not good or evil, it's dysfunctional or functional.
That's right.
And you say the fall did not change their inherent identity, rather it introduced dysfunction into their life experience. And you highlight even Luke 3:38, where it says Adam is described not as the one who sinned and fell, but simply as a son of God.
Yeah.
It was still his identity.
Yeah.
His identity was son, always was son, never
Isn't that
was
great?
sinner, right?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
like us.
So
Luke's choice of words is significant. He doesn't refer to Adam as a fallen son of God or as once a son of God or even as a disobedient son of God, but simply a son of God.
Yeah.
And I love that. That was one of my favorite things you said in the book. And so it's very thought-provoking, very challenging. If you're sitting there being really curious, I encourage you to get the book. If you've been on this journey with us and eat everything up that we have to say, you're going to love this book. It's really, really great. And it officially gave you a doctorate title. So it is worthy of you to read just because, Robin, you're amazing. So anything else on your books that you want to highlight?
I don't think so. That one was tough because I had to do footnotes.
Right.
You know, and I don't write with footnotes.
Right? Who does?
I know.
And who checks footnotes?
Well,
Matt Pendle, the only one.
Yeah, Steve McVeigh also.
Touche.
But I don't write with footnotes. And so that was really challenging. But yeah, no, it's a good book.
So 2 minutes or less. So I'm Healed is specifically about what?
Our identity. All my books are about identity.
Yeah.
So,
you'd say they're all about identity?
I think so.
Yeah.
I Am Healed is not a book of testimonies. In fact, I had to put a subtitle on it just so people would realize it wasn't a testimony of my healing. Though I've been healed multiple times,
sure,
it was about identity, that we have always been healed.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
So you got a closing question on this part?
I don't know about a closing question, but one of the things we ask all of our guests that come on the show is, of course, we have a growing audience and we're reaching more and more people every single week. Mm-hmm. And so think about our listeners and some people out there that you might want to encourage. What's something or a thought or something that you carry with you at all times to just like bring encouragement to people?
Stick with it. I think sometimes we give up too fast. You know, it takes a while for our heads to catch up with what our hearts know is true. You know, and sometimes we read something and it's tough to wrap our heads around it. And so we just dismiss it, or we keep at it, but we don't see a change. We don't feel a change on the inside. Our thinking's still wonky. And so we just put it aside and give up. And if we just stick with it, you know, that breakthrough comes, that moment of, oh, I get it. Now I get it. You know?
Yeah, that's
I love that. Matter of fact, I made up a word a long time ago because it's something my dad taught me was stick with itness. I don't even think that's a word, but it's just kind of been my mantra as well, just to continue to stick with whatever's in front of you and endure and keep going. And I love that. So thank you, Robin. Thank you guys for joining us for part one. Make sure you join us next week because I think we're going to talk a little bit about my book, the process, TWS, the publishing that Robin does. And until then, one of the things that we do on our show to end every podcast is we want to make sure we speak a declaration over people, and it's you're loved and there's nothing you can do about it. So I would love for you to just let our listeners and audience know in the show with those words?
Oh, you are loved, and there is nothing you can do about it. The Father loves you 100% unconditionally, didn't ask your permission, just meets you where you're at, loving on you.
Amazing.